Has anyone heard of the quote-unquote Bloodworth accident? Everyone's been talking about it, but I have no idea what it's about. It was only my second day when I heard about the quote-unquote Bloodworth accident. Jaylene brought it up while we were eating lunch together. Of course, after the Bloodworth accident, my wife and I got an entire home safety system. It cost a fortune, but it's worth the peace of mind. I wasn't really interested in the conversation. I was more interested in scarfing down the burrito right in front of me. So I didn't ask about the quote-unquote Bloodworth accident. But then it came up again and again and again. Stain. We haven't left our curtains open since Bloodworth. Cassidy. I probably would have been a nurse forever if Bloodworth had it never happened, but I just didn't feel safe anymore. Larry. Did you catch that special on Bloodworth accident last night? Unlike my coworkers, I was in Green Creek. I figured out the quote-unquote Bloodworth accident was some sort of local thing that happened a few years ago. Maybe a convict escaped from prison named Bloodworth. Maybe there was an accident on the street that was named Bloodworth. Maybe there was an accident on Bloodworth Street, or a flu breakout named Bloodworth. I was curious, but the social pressure to appear like everyone else kept me from asking. But then the comments got weirder. I'm writing a novel for Narano Rayo Mano this year, Aaliyah said during lunch. It's about what life would be like if Bloodworth accident had never happened. Ooh, that's such a good idea, Stain said. That sounds so interesting. I'd love to read about it, said Jaylene. Wait, what? Now, they were talking about it like it was a national life-altering disaster, not just some local accident. There was a pause in the conversation. I finally took my chance. Wait, sorry, I'm confused. What's the Bloodworth accident? Aaliyah looked at me dead in the eye, and then she burst out laughing. Slowly, my other co-workers broke out laughing too, until everyone at the table was chuckling. You're funny, Amanda, Amira said, shooting me a grin. I like you. I wanted to say, no, I'm serious. What is it? But there was something about the atmosphere that made me uncomfortable. So I said nothing. When I got home, I spent an hour on Google. Bloodworth accident, Bloodworth, Green Creek, Pennsylvania. Nothing came up. I tried multiple combinations of keys, trying filtering with the time ranges of search results, and still nada. But when I woke up the next morning, everything was crystal clear. It was a prank, some sort of hazy ritual of new hires that made sense. The software development team was a radical, loose gyro crowd. Stain swore all the time. Cassie came to work in sweatpants. Lunchtime conversations included borderline inappropriate topics like pace tales of drunk deliverers or TMI details of Stain's recent divorce. This was exactly the kind of thing they'd pull. Besides, if the quote-unquote Bloodworth accident really happened, they wouldn't mention it so often. It came up almost every day, like they were trying to talk about it as much as possible. Unfortunately, I couldn't confront them today. It was a Saturday, so I spent my morning at the local coffee shop getting some editing work done for my side hustle. That's when things got weird. Two young women sat down next to the booth, talking loudly about the party last night, and a few minutes into their conversation, I heard them mention it. I haven't slept through the night since the Bloodworth accident. I froze. So it wasn't some prank in the office. It was something other people knew about in the town. For a minute, I just sat there in silence, my mind relieving. Then I cut in. Excuse me, sorry to bother you, but could you tell me about the Bloodworth accident and what it is? Both the girls turned to me. Then the brunette one stood up. Sorry. We have to go, she said quickly. I watched as the two girls hurried out, glancing back to make sure I wasn't following them. I called my mom after that in the afternoon. She had never heard of the Bloodworth accident. I texted a few other my friends. They also had no idea what it was. I drove to my Walmart just a few miles outside of the town's border, stuck in a conversation with the cashier, and mentioned the Bloodworth accident. She stared at me with wide blue eyes. What accident? I drove back into the town on a narrow 2-lane road and sneaked through the forest. Just beyond the old hand-painted "Welcome to Green Creek" sign, there was a little gas station. It looked like it'd seen better days. From the paint peeling on the mini market of the reek creaking up the side of the pumps, I went into the mini mart, poured myself a coffee, and made my way to the bored-looking man sitting behind the counter. Coffee? This late? He asked with a smile. It was almost 7. Starting to get dark. I haven't been sleeping much since the Bloodworth accident, I replied, pulling out my wallet. A pause. Oh, yeah, it's been crazy. Sometimes I get up in the middle of the night and check the logs. He rang up my coffee. 2:13. I handed him my card, and then I decided to push a little. Aren't you afraid he might break in through the windows? He looked up at me with a frown. He? Sorry, I meant she? His expression darkened. His gaze flickered to the door. And there he stood, taking a step towards me. What is he doing? Every muscle in my body froze. Is he trying something? Get out now. You don't know what the Bloodworth accident is, do you? He asked. No. You sure as hell better not let anyone know. I stood there frozen, stunned. Seconds later, the bell jingled behind me. As another customer entered, he smiled and waved like nothing had happened. I turned on my heel and ran back to the car. It was starting to get dark. Deep blue shadows stretched across the road from the bare trees like giant claws. I started up in the car and pulled out into the road, headlight glaring into the darkness. Don't let anyone know. Why? Was it some sort of conflict? Or a cult thing? Maybe some type of cult leader lived in the town. Maybe he brainwashed everyone here and invented an quote-unquote accident to fear more his followers into behaving. Or maybe not knowing about the accident was some sort of signal that I wasn't a member of the cult, that I should be hunted down. I drove down to Main Street. I passed the town library. But then an idea hit me. I made a U-turn and pulled into the tiny parking lot. A woman sat behind the desk, working a computer that looked like it was from 2 decades ago. She reminded me a hurtable little grandmother with her oversized, skeptical gray hair and knitted sweater. Do you keep old newspapers, like local ones, from a few years ago? Of course, she replied with a sweet smile. You can find them down there. I walked down one of the aisles to where the microfile were kept. My footsteps sound loud in the silence, echoing among the dusty books. I grabbed a film from the 2000s and started my search, scanning article after article on the screen, looking for any mention of Bloodworth accident. I honestly didn't expect to find anything, but then I came across an issue on the Green Creek Federal from July 3rd, 2005. Heart hammering. I began to read. Town Racked by Bloodworth Accident by Joan Mathorline. On the morning of July the 2nd, a horror shook our little town of Green Creek, Pennsylvania. Near half of our residents woke to find their front doors mysteriously open with a dark, sticky substance pooling on the floor. But that was only the beginning. Those residents began to exhibit. Continue on page 2. I flipped a page and gasped. The entire article was scribbled out with a black marker. There was even a photo of the main street, granny, black and white. I could tell out of the library, the other shops, the sky. But the marker was scribbled over most of the street, but not fully. I could make out a pair of shoes as if someone was lying there, a body. And if I used my imagination, based on how many scribbled out blobs there were, I could guess there was no less than 20 bodies in the middle of the street. I clapped my hand over my mouth. I clicked wildly at the mouse, moving through the next few issues, looking for any mention of Bloodworth. I didn't find any. But I did find something else. A tribute to John McClurfline. We sadly mourn the death of our very own head journalist, Johnny McClurfline. She was only 41 years old. A voice snapped me out of my trance. "What are you doing?" I whipped around. The librarian was standing right behind me, but she didn't look so warm and fuzzy now. Her expression darkened, stone-like. She stared at the screen in front of me. A quiet flurry in her eyes began to glass. "I'm sorry. I was just..." "You came here to find out about Bloodworth, didn't you?" she snarled. You don't know about it. You're one of them." I expected her to lunge at me, grab me, chase me out, but instead she tilted her head towards me, towards the ceiling, and let out a loud, blood-curdling scream I've ever heard. Shuffling, ruffling sounds echoed from the other aisles. I broke into a run, leaped past her, sprinting as fast as I possibly could. Once I made it to the atrium, I glanced back. 3 other townspeople were running towards me, shouting at other people. I ran for my life. By a miracle, I made it out to my car. As I pulled away, I saw them standing at the door staring at me. Like an idiot, I thought I'd lost them. But as soon as I pulled into Main Street, I heard the police sirens pierce the air, red and blue lights flashing in my rear view. I pushed the pedal on the floor. As soon as I crossed the town boundary, the gas station, the sign, the police officers pulled off of the side of the road. He didn't follow me. He just watched me as I sped away from the place. I never went back, obviously. Never got my stuff. I got a new job, moved 3 states away, and started my post-college life over again. I assumed that was the end of it, and I'd never hear about the Bloodworth accident again. I was wrong. 7 months later, after I moved, I've met someone. He just moved to my city. and our dates had been phenomenal. I'd taken him to the best restaurants and museums, showed him everything there was to do here. We were just about to celebrate our first month together when he said something that stopped me in my tracks. "You really should get a deadbolt for the door," he said casually as we watched the TV on the couch. "'Cause we wouldn't want another Bloodworth accident, would we?"